All right. This is the Wasatch Front Waste and Recycling District Administrative Control Board meeting for October 25th, 2021. It is 9 a.m. We are both on WebEx and at our anchor location at the district office. To start off, we'll have Anthony do a roll call so we can confirm who is here and make sure that we have the quorum.
Thank you, Board Chair Bracken. So currently in attendance via WebEx, I have Board Chair Scott Bracken from Cottonwood Heights, Board Vice Chair Sherry Orn from Harriman City, Board Member Phil Cardenas from White City Metro Township, Board Member Daniel Gibbons from Holiday City, Board Member Dwight Marchant from Mill Creek City, Board Member Chris Nickel from Sandy City, Board Member Patrick Schaefer from Kern Metro Township, Board Member Diane Turner from Murray City, and here on site we have Board Member Keith Sussman from the town of Brighton. Are there any board members in attendance who I did not call? Thank you very much. We ask that with the webinar you please mute your microphone unless speaking. However, please, when you're speaking, please speak up for the video broadcast, and also when speaking, please state your name and the municipality you represent. Thank you, Board Chair Bracken.
All right. The first item on the is the consent items, the meetings from last month, or the minutes, excuse me, from last month. Are there any comments or changes to there? Do we have it? If there are no changes, do we have a motion to approve the consent items?
Mr. Chair, this is Chris Nichols, Sandy City. I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Okay. Have a second?
I'll second. This is Sherry.
All right. All those in favor say aye.
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 All right. Are there any opposed?
Nancy, will you note that?
I do not hear any, and I don't see anybody's microphones going on and off, so we'll go with that is unanimous. Our next item is public comments. Is there anyone logged on, Anthony, that has indicated like they'd like to make, if you are online and want to make a comment, raise your hand. Is there anyone in the anchor location?
No, Board Chair Bracken, there are no members of the public here at the anchor location, and I have not received any emails of public comment to be read.
Okay, and we don't have anyone on the WebEx that we don't know that's here for another reason, okay? All right. Moving forward then, the business items, 3.1, we'll turn that over to Pam for a residence request for abatement.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. Every now and then we get a request from residents to refund beyond what is allowed with my authority. I gave a little background here of the policy that exists for refund or abatement, and this was adopted, the original policy was adopted in 2013. Then in 2015, with so many refunds coming in, we had the board look at the fact that we were billing residents with now kind of a line item bill statement that says, you know, how many cans they have, what we're billing those cans, the amount that we're billing those cans. So the thought was that we would limit any kind of a refund to a maximum of four years. So I have the authority to refund up to 2 years, but anything requested by a resident to go beyond those 2 years needs to come to you as a board. We have Mr. and Mrs. Taylor who own 2 separate properties in the district. They recently discovered that we were overcharging one of those properties for two garbage cans when they only had one. So Mr. Taylor called in, requested, and was told by our customer accounts coordinator that we could refund up to 2 years. The incorrect charge has been happening since 2015, we discovered. Unfortunately, the Taylors didn't discover it until recently. So at any rate, I am requesting to go with what has been set by precedence with a 4-year refund. And then also our standard practice is to withhold any kind of an amount that might be due. And so as you know, we just mailed out the third quarter billing statement, so the Taylors would owe $51, so we would withhold that from the total amount due of $804, and their total refund would be $753 that I would need approved. Mr. Taylor did want me to make sure that you knew that he is requesting the full amount since 2015. I did explain the policy. I gave him the state statute that this policy is referring to, the statute that limits those refunds up to 4 years. I hope that all made sense, but if you have questions, I'm willing to answer. I think I got it all.
Are there any questions from the board on this particular item? We have done this a few times where we've extended it to the full 4 years. In my opinion, yes, we've updated our billing. There was a lot of changes that went on through there when we went through that process. A lot of people realized that what they were paying was not what they wanted or they received, and we changed a lot of those. There's also, there's a responsibility on our part to bill what's correctly. There's also, I believe, a part on the residents to look at their bills and make sure that if there's an error or there's something that's wrong, that they let us know so that we can fix it. So I personally be inclined to go with the recommendation that Pam has made, but certainly willing to entertain any other comments or questions.
This is Marchant from Mill Creek. I concur with the staff recommendation that we refund as recommended by staff.
Is that going to be a motion, Dwight?
Yes, I'll make that motion that we approve the staff recommendation for the refund.
This is Chris Nickel. I'll second.
Are there any other questions or comments? Apparently we have a cricket. That's literally the first time I heard crickets, when someone was about to say crickets. If there are no other questions, then all those in favor say aye.
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 Are there any opposed? Okay, hearing none, that will stand approved as recommended. Okay. Second item is a request for container specialist job class adjustment. I will turn this over to Pam and Melissa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As you all know, Melissa Cotter is our wonderful HR consultant that works with compensation for us. We have been recruiting, as you know, for driver positions, and you've been wonderful at adjusting wages according to market. Greatly appreciate that. It has helped with staffing and recruitment and retaining employees, so thank you. There's another job class within our organization called the container specialist position. Let me explain what that position entails, the responsibilities. These are the folks that go out. We have 3 FTEs within this job class, and this is the crews that go out and they deliver cans to new homes. They replace cans, so they'll take a new can or a refurbished can out when a resident has a broken can. They also go out and repair cans or replace lids, et cetera, et cetera. So that's their main functions. So they operate a medium size or medium heavy duty truck, and it carries those containers in the back. And they also have warehouse duties where they have to handle our inventory, operate a forklift. So we have had challenges with recruiting in this job class as well as retaining employees. We had quite a bit of turnover just earlier this year. So Melissa went out and took a look at other related positions. And Melissa, if I may, just turn that over to you now.
Sure, thank you. Thanks so much for having me on today. Just a little bit of historical information. In the fall of 2019, I conducted a market analysis for all positions for WFWRD. And each year, so in 2020 and 2021, we did COLA adjustments for this range, but unfortunately, it hasn't kept up with the market data that I actively looked at as of October 1st. And the data that I look at comes from credible third-party salary surveys. They're local for this area. And primarily what we're looking at for this position is kind of like local driver who doesn't require a CDL, but it also has warehouse components to it too, as well as forklift operator, and then also kind of a general warehouse worker or laborer as they're fixing the containers. And so looking at all of that market data, what was discovered is there's a 12.9% difference with the market data. So even though we were giving COLA adjustments for this position, it just hasn't kept up with market. And as you all know, this is kind of the industry that it's hard to just recruit employees for. We've got a lot of competitors with Amazon and different warehousing companies that have made the Wasatch Front their home. And so in order to be competitive, we truly do need to make this recommendation as a mid-year adjustment. This position also impacts the starting pay for the temporary area cleanup position. And I know that there's always challenges with that. And by making this recommendation, it's going to allow us the next time that recruitment happens that we're going to be more competitive with that position. I think the only other thing I wanted to say is that the reason why this job wasn't included with the market and the mid-year adjustment that we did a couple of years or months ago was because it was a non-CDL position, and we truly thought that that was where we were struggling. But this most recent recruitment, there's 3 openings. I'm sorry, there was 3 positions. We only had 1 active employee. And so there was 2 current recruitments that they went out for, and they received 3 applicants. And they were had some skill set, but it was felt that if we would have had a higher starting pay, that we probably wouldn't have been able to have a larger hiring pool from that. So I'm going to turn that back over to you, Pam, if you want to include anything else with that.
Yes, I just want to thank you for specifying this is a non-CDL, which is the big reason why it wasn't included with our equipment operators previously. So with the fact that we have struggled, in fact, we still have 1 vacant FTE position in this job class that we do want to go out and recruit for again. Where we've been lucky is we've had area cleanup, as Melissa mentioned, it does kind of impact the area cleanup, but we've been able to recruit people from the area cleanup that have been working for us, so we kind of get a sense of how they work, if they'll be reliable. And we actually recruited 4 area cleanup drivers, 4 full-time equipment operators that are now working on that side of our services. And then one of the FTEs on this container specialist also came from that pool, but we do need to go back out and get that 3rd FTE. And I'm confident we'll be able to get a good pool with this higher wage. It's about $2 an hour more, which I think will be really competitive with our benefit package. I may add that.
Yeah, and that is a key. Getting benefits sometimes at that pay rate is not something that you can normally get.
Yeah.
Are there any questions from the board on this? Do you have an annualized amount for all three positions?
And I'll defer to our wonderful CFO. I know that he's done that as part of the 2022 budget. So it's calculated into those factors.
So this would
I
be,
believe.
the budget presentation that we're about to have would include this adjustment going forward.
Yes, sorry.
That's correct. Yes. And as far as the annual wages, it was approximately $12,000.
And I was going to say, that's what I
For
was
the three-
expecting. That it
Yeah,
probably
for the
would.
three positions, $1.72 an hour for the current one, and then $2 an hour for the other two positions. So it's approximately $12,000 right around there.
Thank you.
Okay,
Chairman Bracken, this is Anna
Yes.
from Taylorsville. May I ask a question?
of course.
With the problems that we're seeing with hiring, could possibly this full-time position be broken down to two part-time positions? Since they don't need their CDL, could we find these employees, one with our maybe college students that would find this pay very appealing? Maybe they don't need those full-time benefits. And B, could we look at maybe some of our younger retired folks in the community that are looking for something part-time? They may not want to be full-time, but these are really attractive wages. And they aren't really learning technical skills. And I just want to throw that out and ask your question as an overall opinion for the employment.
And Andrea Murdoch, as you may see further in my report, has received a wonderful career opportunity and moved on to Westminster as their HR director. So Melissa, I would kind of rely on you for some assistance to address that. I think Board Member Barbieri, that's a very good question. I think that depending on who applies, and if we find that people desire something like this and they make some sort of a request for a job share or something of that nature, we are very open to being flexible. There are some challenges because of the hours that are required for this job. These folks actually start about 6 a.m., 5:45, 6 a.m., and work until about 2:45 or 3 p.m. So there are some, and that's mainly because of our operating hours. They try to get out there before our equipment operators start hitting their routes, or right after they pick up the cans so that they can, take care of anything broken or needs replacement or something of that nature. So it really depends on the applicant's abilities. But yes, we're open to that if that's kind of what if it's what's needed. Now, I can say that we haven't in the past targeted those types of populations for these positions. It's something we could certainly explore.
I think it might be worth looking at. I know that one of the other considerations to do on that would be just the overall. I don't know if we have a significant risk or safety factor with the non-CDL drivers, and they're driving not quite as large trucks. But that would be the other one, is if you start to get too many drivers without sufficient safety issues, then we would run into an issue with the local government's trust. We ran into that a little bit with some other drivers that we had with vehicles. Just kind of anyway, that would be another consideration, but honestly, I hadn't considered that as an option. But if we're open to the job sharing, if you found the right two people to do it, it might certainly be worth looking into.
I think just one more thing to add. I think all those were great suggestions, but the hope is that this becomes a starting point for a career ladder. to encourage them to get their CDL so that they can promote into an equipment operator position. So I think we're really targeting those people that kind of want to get into that industry and just have a foot in the door. So whether that is somebody who is looking for part-time right now, or if you're looking for someone who's more in the retiree spectrum, I think we'd have to look at that further to see if that's really our target market for this position.
This is Sherry from Harriman. Thanks for that suggestion. Actually, I concur that it's a good idea to look into it, because it seems like we're constantly chasing these markets, and where I understand for sure that we'd like it to be some sort of a career ladder position. Maybe in this market we're just not in the position for that, and so maybe if we target some areas that maybe other people are not targeting, to where a college student, maybe they have classes Monday, Wednesday, Friday, this would work great for them Tuesday, Thursday, and the flip, if somebody's in class Tuesday, Thursday, Monday, Wednesday, Friday might work great for them, something like that. It's certainly not a bad idea to explore it and see if we have some interest there. So we're just not constantly, it feels like we're just constantly chasing markets with salary, and maybe we just take a different approach, like what's suggested, and maybe look at an alternative, maybe a market that's not being chased as hard.
Diane Turner,
Yeah.
Murray City.
Go ahead, Diane.
Thanks. I guess if we're having a hard time recruiting, can we have either option? I'm not sure how that would work. I'm not sure if the part-time would do what we want. So anyway, I support the raise as well, and then also looking at perhaps doing part-time. Thank you.
Chairman Bracken.
Yes.
I trust that Pam and her crew fully understand the employment problems better than I do at this point. Having my own business, I've really had to think outside the box as far as employment. And there are a lot of people out there who are talented enough to take these jobs and are willing to work maybe some different hours to meet their needs. I have to concur. I feel like every time we have a meeting, we've got to raise their pay, raise their pay, raise their pay. Maybe we're just, and that's probably true. And I don't have a problem with this particular pay raise. As they keep coming to us, I think I am going to have a problem with it, because I think we are just chasing the market rather than maybe chasing some people who could fit these positions. And they'd be open to it if they knew about it. Now, I agree, these are great starting positions so that they can get their CDLs and move on. Perhaps we can just set aside that we may never find exactly what we need for these, and maybe we'll always have 2 or 3 positions that are not CDL, that don't require the CDL, but they are flexible positions for some people out there looking for part-time. Just a thought. Thank you.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
This is Tessa Stitzer from Copperton. If these wage increases are approved, how does that affect 2022 and quarterly service fees?
At the amount for this specific and isolated one, it wouldn't significantly, because the amounts, as Paul said, about 12,000.
So my question is, will it? Because I guess my question is, will it? If there's a possibility, that's one thing, but I kind of wanted to get an idea of, do we know if this will add to next year or not?
What I heard Paul say was that it's currently in the proposed budget. Certainly over time, anytime you give FTE allotment or the COLAs or pay adjustments like what we have been doing, that does have a long-term impact, and it will eventually result in a fee increase. That's just kind of the nature of the way things are.
Well, of course, I guess
Yeah.
for me, it's, we're looking at increases, tax increases across the board. So
Right.
just doing my due diligence for my council, I just want to know, what are we looking at as a possible increase for 2022 as a result of this? If there is one, is there going to be one? Is that something that can be answered?
I think Paul will answer that. I don't know if you want the spoiler now, but the answer is I know there isn't a proposed increase for next year. And in response to we seem to be doing these pay adjustments a lot. The reality is yes, we are, and certainly more than I have ever seen in when did I start here, Pam? It was 2010 or 11. But we have a couple of factors that are really impacting that. With inflation being what it is as a result of supply chain issues, the pandemic, just trying to keep things. We're dealing with it in the local cities as well, with employees and police officers and firefighters, just trying to keep our head above water. And while we will always, and I will always work to keep fees as low as possible, at the same time, we are charged with providing a statutory service, and we want to continue to be able to do that as best as we can for the least amount of money that we can. And one of the key, in our case, the key pieces in being able to do that is making sure we have drivers in the trucks so that we can actually get the garbage out. I've certainly seen the stories from New York City and others where they can't even empty the garbage, or they can't take it to landfill. It just floats around the river and the ocean, and I certainly don't want us to get to that spot. And so,
which like you're saying, I mean, those things all make sense.
Yeah.
The biggest reason for my question was purely, we have other entities, other service fees, other increases, right. And that's kind of where I'm standing with some that have already been passed and some that are going to be proposed. Right. Just making sure that as we start, I understand the need for it. That's not my conversation. It's more, I just want to know, what would the impact from this particular portion of next year, what would that look like? So if at one point, I mean, I don't like to vote on things unless I know how it's going to affect an increase or how that's going to look for the residents that are going to be paying those bills. So does that make more sense?
Yes, and I'll be honest, I was probably speaking more to anybody in the public that might be listening to this that might not understand that as well. I mean, I do have we all sit on boards and councils, and we're dealing with the same thing right now in many different locations.
Certainly. Mr. Chair, if I could chime in, Brent Peel, Magna. Just a couple of notes, sitting here listening to everybody, and I think that Chair Bracken indicated this. Everybody is chasing salaries right now across the board. UPD, UFA, any water districts, everybody's chasing salaries right now. If I understand this proposal right, this increase is to get us to a point where possibly we could entice a full-time position and not a share position. I think if we implement this increase and search for that full, that FTE, and it doesn't work, maybe we look at some of those other options of looking at a different market for the position. And to answer Tessa's, I think, a point, we're under budget because of because of employees are not full-time or full staff personnel. Our budget next year doesn't look like we're not proposing a fee increase, and this is going to fit in the proposed budget. I think that's what your concern is. This increase right now is not going to affect a fee increase for next year.
Excellent. Thank you so much. That is
Thank you.
exactly the question that I had and the answer I was looking for.
I thought
and you-
I felt I felt like that was the case, so that's why I chimed
No,
in.
you explained it much better than I did. I apologize. It
Thank
was
you.
pretty
No,
vague.
no problem.
But yeah, exactly what you said as far as looking at UPD, UFA, all of the other increases, being part of a council that has to report this not only back to my council, but to my residents. The first thing they ask is, if you increased wages, how does that affect my bill? So thank you for answering that.
Are there any other questions or comments on this proposal or a motion?
This is Sherry. I'll make a motion to approve the proposed pay increase.
This is Dwight. I'll second her motion.
Are there any other comments? Hearing none, then all those in favor say aye.
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 Are there any opposed? Okay, that motion passes. Okay, the next item is a little bit what we were discussing on, and I guess if I was smarter, I might have reversed these on the agenda, but the third quarter, or this is the third quarter financial report. The adoption of the tentative budget comes later, but we will get there. So go ahead, Paul, and let's go over our third quarter report.
Good morning. This is the normal format that we use, and we'll just go through and talk about some of the things we're seeing. There are changes out there. You've touched on some of them. I mean, we're feeling inflationary pressures in a couple different areas. We'll look at that. And then also talk about wages, and then also some of the benefits that we've seen this year. And so to start out with, revenues, total revenues have increased $562,000 from 2021. This increase was primarily due to a $125,000 increase in residential waste collection fees, a $170,000 increase in green curbside fees, and a reduction in a $235,000 reduction in the loss on the sale of trucks. And we also saw an increase in miscellaneous revenue this year, and one area where we're down is interest income. That's decreased. Let me just mention the loss on the trucks. We're showing less of a loss through September. We sold 4 trucks the 1st of October, and that loss will increase at year end. But overall, when we look at the bottom line number, we're up $562,000 versus last year. So that's a plus. Also, I wanted to point out on here, recycling revenue. We have $25,000 in there that we've recorded in this quarter. And so that's a real plus. We'll talk on recycling. We'll talk about recycling later in the report. So any questions on revenues? Okay.
No.
Next is personnel, and our total personnel expenses for 2021 have increased $367,000 from 2020, primarily due to increased wages of $166,000 and increased overtime pay of $71,000. Also, health insurance is up $78,000 versus last year, which is due to a general rate increase of 3.9%, increased number of employees, and also more employees with family coverage. On overtime, we're up this year. Last year, we were approximately 4,100 hours. This year, we're up to almost 4,900 hours. So our actual overtime hours are up about 800 hours versus last year. But we are getting the work done. That's the plus. And then also, we have had some decreases in expenses in other areas that help offset some of these increases here. I think really we were expecting and anticipating an increase in personnel expenses this year, especially with some of the things we've done in the past and that were previously discussed in this meeting. And so I don't think this is a surprise at all when we see the personnel expenses are up.
Hey, Paul, will you explain what's driving the overtime increase?
A lot of that is just where we've been short-staffed a little, but even a bigger piece than that has been the absences of employees. We're still seeing a lot of absences, COVID-related primarily, and it comes and goes. I mean, we've been through some cycles with that, but that's really a big piece of what's driving that overtime is we have employees hired, but then they're not able to come to work due to sickness or health issues, or a family member may also have health issues or sickness, and that affects them too. And so I think that has driven the overtime this year up.
Are we continuing to track that? And the only reason I ask is you never know. Sometimes the federal government seems to throw out our money in different areas. And if we do continue to track that, if at some point there is an opportunity for some reimbursement on that overtime due to pandemic status or things like that, it would be great to be in a position to where we could request that.
Yeah, overtime, I don't think we've dug down into the detail as far as allocating overtime hours to the pandemic or to that. What we do though, and we do track in detail, is how much we've paid in COVID leave. And I think that would be very close, or that would show, you know, what's happening in that realm. And so we are still tracking what we're paying as far as COVID related leave per employee.
Okay, my assumption is that it probably won't matter as far as we probably are past the reimbursement on that, but if for some reason it would be good to be in that position to request.
Yeah, yes, I agree. And then also it's good for us to know is, you know, manager, what's going on with the organization and monitoring that. And so we do track that.
All right, thank you.
We can move on to the next slide.
Yeah.
Okay, this is our operating expenses. Total operating expenses for 2021 decreased $855,000 compared to 2020 through the 9 months ended September 30th. Primarily due to decreased recycling fees of $534,000, decreased depreciation expense of $203,000, decreased disposal fees of $112,000, and also decreased truck lease expense of $96,000. We expect that truck lease expense will increase significantly next year, but this decrease in operating expenses is what has allowed us to not raise fees this year. And so these decreases have more than offset the increase in personnel expenses. But with that said, we always need to remember, and our board chair pointed it out, personnel expenses do not go away. I mean, once, you know, we increase wages, they're out there and they'll be there in the future. And so we have had the benefit this year that they are offset somewhat. And well, actually they're completely offset. The increase has been completely offset primarily by recycling fees.
Yeah, I was going to make that has been a very significant change this year. The last few years, 3-4 years, we've been paying out and sometimes paying a significant more per ton fee for recycling than our regular waste, but we knew that it was probably temporary. And in the past, recycling fees have actually been a recycling revenue stream, and it looks like we're starting to get back a little bit closer to where that's the case, to where it's actually a revenue source, a net revenue source rather than a net expense. And so it's great that you know, $500,000 there certainly went a long way to not having a fee increase this year. I think this is the second year in a row we've been able to postpone that fee increase over our original projections.
Yes. And then when we look at our total operating expenses are down, and then when you look at revenues less expenses, right now for this year through 9 months, we're showing approximately a $300,000 negative number versus a $1.3 million negative number last year. So it's been a fairly significant change there. And it's due to these expenses that have decreased, and then also the increase in revenues that we previously talked about. Are there any questions on this area? We'll get into some more of the details in some of these areas coming up. This shows our number of customers, basic service, staying relatively stable this year, right around 86,000. That's what it was at the end of 2020, and then also that's about where we were at as of the end of September. Fuel expense.
Sorry, Paul, I just wanted to pop in. I think what Paul said is something for us to remember going forward. That the first thing, whenever you propose a rate increase or a tax increase, the first thing people say is you need to cut back first, cut back, be more efficient first, and then you can talk to us about raising fees. What Paul has been detailing here is just that. We have, again, for the last couple of years, we have been able to reduce expenses, hold costs in line, and this is the holding back and the cutting the expenses part before we go for a fee increase, which will likely be next year unless we have some other significant changes. But this is that time to maybe put in your mind, so if someone asks, you say, well, that those cuts and those savings all happened in 2021 and in 2020. That's why we aren't here now until 2022. I hope that made sense.
Chair, your fee increase you talked about for next year would be in next year's budget, meaning the fee increase wouldn't take place till 23.
Right.
Okay.
And you're correct. I did not speak very clearly on that.
Yes.
Good point.
After you so nicely told Tessa that we weren't doing a fee increase, and then I go babbling on and screw it up. It is probably projected for 2023. I apologize, and thanks
No
for
worries.
calling. Yeah.
Thank you.
But it really speaks to Tessa's question too, though, is we have been able to push this fee increase out every year. It seems like we keep being able to push it out. So I think that when we go back to our residents, that's what we say is we're trying hard to reduce these fees, not fees, but costs, so that we can maintain their fees without an increase every other year.
And that has been one of my favorite parts of being a liaison to my council for WFWRD is the fact that I can go back to my council and show them where cuts have been made, where revenues have increased, and how long those fee increases have been pushed. So I really appreciate that.
Okay. Well, we can move off my tangent now, Paul, and you can go back to what you were actually saying.
Okay, we're back to fuel expense. So fuel expense, we're up 8% this year. It's interesting here, you look at this graph and we were down 11% in 2019, up almost approximately 4% in 2020, and now we're up 8%. And we'll see where this ends. I mean, if you read the current economic literature or looking out there, there's a lot of people are predicting this is going to continue high for the foreseeable future with both diesel and CNG. And so we'll see what happens on this. It's interesting following these volatile markets, and then also we are very dependent upon some of those markets. As far as fuel costs go,
like my home. It looks exactly like my home budget.
Yeah. So, and most of us feel this anyway. I mean, gas is different than diesel, but still it tracks somewhat and it has increased. And so I think we feel this, and then also with our fuel costs for our home. But as far as fuel costs go, through the first 9 months of this year, a CNG was 79% of the fuel cost, and diesel was 21% of the fuel cost. And so our side load trucks, they go out and pick up recycling and refuse, they are all CNG. Where we use diesel is some of our trucks that we use to haul trailers, and then also with the area cleanup program, we use diesel in those trucks. And so CNG is 79% of the fuel cost, diesel is 21% of the fuel cost. And then as far as gallons goes, CNG is 88% of the gallons, and diesel is 12% of the gallons so far through the year. And so the cost per gallon of CNG has been approximately $1.70 a gallon this year. And in diesel, we've averaged $3.22 a gallon through 9 months. So we'll see where this ends. This is one that we kind of just have to keep an eye on, and you know, we make a best estimate and see what happens. But it also encourages us to keep a cushion in our cash balance too. That's the other side. So, the next one is maintenance expense. This is good news so far this year. We're down 3%. In 2019, we were up 4%. We were up approximately 11% in 2020, and then we're down approximately 3% this year. And so maintenance expense has really stayed relatively stable this year, and we'll see how that ends up at year end. This is good news so far, but I'm always hesitant until we get to year end to declare that, you know, this is going to stay low for the complete year, but it's looking promising at this stage.
So, and the other issue with maintenance is with having longer delivery times for our new trucks. That obviously means we're keeping some trucks longer than we normally would have, and that at some point you would expect would show up in your maintenance expenses. So this is particularly good news.
Yes. The next one is refuse tons. We're down about 3% this year. If you look at the top, the bottom line there, the blue is this year, 2021, and we're right at 97,000 tons of refuse. Down about 3%. We increased in the previous years approximately 4% in 2019 and in 2020, and then we've seen a decrease this year. And I think part of that was last year was somewhat abnormal in the sense of how many people were home and for how long a time period they were at home. And so I think we saw a boost or an increase somewhat from that. And then you can go down and look and see at the different categories and see where we're at as far as where we take it. ACE, Transjordan, the transfer station, and then also Salt Lake landfill.
And then just if I may say that we are within our agreement obligations to ensure that we take at least 94,000 tons a year to the Salt Lake Valley facility, so we will meet that. While still shifting some of the waste over to the ACE transfer station where it makes sense. Okay.
And the next graph is the recycled tons. We continue to see a decrease in recycling tons, and it's really been consistent. I mean, over the years, every year it's decreased just a little portion or a small portion. Okay, this is the recycling cost per ton. And so when we look at this, we see 2017 was the orange, and we actually were getting some money there in 2017. When it's a negative $10, that means we were receiving that $10 per ton. And in 2018, at the start of 2018, it's the gray line. We also received some money, some funds there the first couple months. And then from 2018 until just recently, 2021, in August, we have been paying a cost per ton rate, and now we're receiving a dollar rate per ton. And so that's where the star's at. We put the star on there so you can see at that point in time, we started to receive funds for our recycling. And hopefully that stays down there. Like we previously said, that's one thing that's really helped us out on deferring or postponing that fee increase.
Okay.
This is the cash balances report. The graph has different years there from 2017 through 2021, and you can see the trend every year. When it goes up and then also when it decreases is very consistent. Really, a lot of it has to do with our billing periods and when we bill and when we get cash in from billing. And then the other big cash outflow is when we purchase trucks or when we pay for the trucks. And so those are really the two big factors on the timing of it. When we look up above, you can see the actual numbers for the last almost 5 years there. and you look at December, you see we were at the end of the year 9.5 million, 10 million, 10.5, and 10 million. And I anticipate we'll be lower than 10 million this year. That's contingent upon if we do get the trucks in and we pay for them. But this does include PTIF, it does include our Zions investment account, and then it includes our operating accounts. And so we'll look at this in a little more detail here in just a minute. I just wanted to point out that number for September, the end of September, we had $9,360,000 in cash balance. And we'll break that down here in just a minute and show some more detail on that on another chart.
And then just as a reminder, our last fee increase was for 2018. So that may describe some of those differences in the cash balances for 18 versus 17, just as a FYI.
Okay.
And this is what we budgeted so for 2021 capital expenditures, 8 side-load CNG trucks. We've paid $1.3 million on those for the chassis and the engines. We're still waiting to get those in, and then we'll make the additional payment. We have 2 light-duty trucks on order, and then also 2 front-load CNG trucks that we've ordered and are in process, and then the CNG fuel island expansion amount. So one thing to be aware of, we are seeing delays, and we'll see if we get those 8 trucks in this year. I think there's some question at this point in time, and we'll see what happens. But there's just delays across the board on a lot of things. And so I know when we've ordered cans, that's been a little slower too, and so we'll see what happens here. This is the certification balance really since 2013, shows the history. We've certified almost $20 million, and we have $2.2 million outstanding, and a lot of that is just due to this year, which we should get a really nice payment on that in December that will really take that balance down and then help our cash balance.
Okay.
Okay, and then we were asked, I think 2 board meetings ago, to provide some information on Zions and PTIF. This was provided by the individuals at Zions Capital Advisors for us, and we presented this before, and so when we look at this, there's a date in the left column. The next one is the interest rate we're earning from PTIF. The third column over is the interest rate we're returning from Zions Capital we're earning, I should say, from Zions Capital Advisors. And then the fourth column is the average balance, and then the interest we earn on the Zions piece, and then also the difference. And so this shows just that relationship, but I also want to point out, we said interest income was down. When we look at the interest, this is for the Zions account, as of 1/31/20, we were earning 2.24%, that number right there at the top of the column. You go down and look at the bottom, we're earning 0.51%. And so, and if you look at PTIF, it's had a similar decrease too. And so that's really contributed to that decrease in interest income there. And so what we see overall is we're earning a little more on the Zions account. I think there's benefits in having funds in both places. We do keep a much more significant balance in the Zions Capital Advisors account. And then when we look down, I told you that number, the $9,360,000, we're going to show what that's made up of. Here's the Zions checking account. That's just our operating account where we make deposits. We issue checks out of that general operating. Express, we have an Express account that from Express Bill Pay, a bank account, that's that account. The PTIF portion, $1.8 million, and then Zions Investments, $7.1 million. And then we have $400 in petty cash. And so that's how that total cash is comprised. Any questions on this?
Thank you.
Thank you for breaking that out. It's very helpful.
Oh, sure. You're welcome.
Okay, so we're moving on to the tentative budget.
Yes, Mr. Chair, if I may, I'll kick it off and then I'll turn over all the financials to Paul. And as you know, we reviewed a lot of this last month, so we're just moving into the need and request for you to tentatively adopt this tentative budget. But the only thing that really has changed is the fact that we did do the 2% COLA and 2% merit, which I will get into on the next page. So this just summarizes the fact that we were, as Paul mentioned, we were able to absorb the increased costs with the need to raise salaries into the market through the recycling fees being decreased and then turning into a revenue, and having significant savings with that and being able to absorb that increased cost is something that I always am thankful for to be able to say, is absorbing increased costs. The only thing we're doing is increasing the cost, the price for purchasing cans, because that has gone up, and I'll get into that going forward, but there is no monthly fee increase to the base fee. We are going to implement a new fee, or requesting to implement a new fee for a 14-yard container when it's used for municipal cleanups or emergency cleanups, so that we have a fee attached to that we can invoice to municipalities. So again, the fees will stay the same. We're going to continue with the same services going forward, with the reservation for what used to be the area cleanup program. I did ask our staff to go back and come up with a nifty new name to memorialize the fact that we do need to make that permanent change, where we don't drop those containers in the streets any longer because we just can't manage it because of staffing. So the staff came up with Seasonal Container Reservation Program. They called it SCRAP. So however you want to pronounce the acronym, SCARP or SCRAP, that's the name that they came up with, and as long as you are okay with that, we'll move forward with it. And then again, it's going to be the reservation program. We're going to continue on with the seasonal services with the central leaf bag collections, which is happening now in your municipal parks, and we're very thankful to have that, a relationship with the county Parks and Rec to have those containers out there for residents to dispose of their leaves. We have the landfill vouchers. We are the only provider that does provide those landfill vouchers at $15 per load for residents to take a truck or trailer load. And then we have the discounted rate for a trailer rental for both bulk and green. So just getting into if there's no questions on that, I'll keep rolling, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
All right, so getting into our personnel, the budget highlights for 2022. As I mentioned last month, Melissa Cotter and I came to you and asked, she presented a 1.5% COLA and a 2% merit, but through discussions, she supported the 2% COLA going forward because there were other market analysis that showed a little higher than just the 3.5. There was, I believe, a 3.7 that was a part of one analysis she did. So she was supportive of a 4% overall increase for personnel. And then we have that lump sum performance incentive that we talked about last month of the $1,500 lump sum for employees that would be at the maximum of their range. And so they would not be eligible for that 2% merit. So we needed to come up with a incentive amount. Melissa did some research and came up with the $1,500. Now, Melissa's still on with this. I don't know if you have anything to add with that, Melissa. You might be on mute, I'm not sure.
The 1,500, that's an average over the 13 employees, or is that just a flat rate for all of them, no matter what?
I'm here. Sorry for the delay.
That's
You were
okay.
asking about how I came up with the 1,500, or is there a different question?
Mine was, is that just flat per person, or is that just the average over the 13, and then it gets divvied out depending on other factors?
You know, we had quite a lengthy discussion about that, and we came up that it was a flat per person because
Okay.
because honestly, it's not based on it's based upon a getting that performance evaluation, and your
Okay.
performance isn't based on longevity of employment. And so there's other factors that come into play with other like service awards or that WFWRD does. And we didn't want to kind of muddy the waters with having to tie it in with this. And so it's kind of an all or none. So instead of them
Okay.
getting the 2% merit, it's just a flat 1,500.
Okay, thank you.
Then we have the 4% increase for all seasonal or temporary staff, and that would include the area cleanup, which is the bulk of our part-time staff. Is the
That's
area
the
cleanup.
scrap people now, right?
Correct. And then also for 2022, we are evaluating what we call phase 3 of the compensation recommendations that Melissa presented earlier this year, which is based on employees' experience, related job experience, I should say, for prior to WFWRD, being employed with WFWRD. So Melissa, I don't know if you want to explain that. We did explain it previously, but if the board has questions on that, we can certainly ask it or answer those now.
No,
Sure.
I
So
think,
I'm just, oh,
I was
okay. I was just going to say a real.
we did that. This will just be the last portion of what we've done twice, and even a little bit today of making those adjustments. This is one more kick at it to finish out the rest of the organization. And we'll probably be dealing with that January, February. Is that correct?
Right. So what we've done so far is all of the employees that are in phase 3 have completed their forms, and right now it's to the verification of the information that is provided. Once those are verified, then we'll calculate what that increase possibly will be using the 2022 pay plan numbers, and then we'll bring back that information to the board.
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much. And then we have the low insurance premium increases that we were able to negotiate, and thankful for our brokers, NFP, to negotiate that with PEHP and then EMI, and continued on with our health insurance benefit plans that we have not made any changes to. There's no questions, I'll just keep rolling on to operations. And the highlights, we're still working on our scheduling tool for the website. We will be engaging with a new vendor that our previous one just could not fulfill what we needed. You'll see Ethan Morris up here, and unfortunately he's leaving us because he has a career opportunity, advancement opportunity elsewhere. And I'll get into that a little later. But at any rate, we'll continue on with the education with his successor for the communities on responsible recycling and so forth. We are targeting risk management to mitigate any kind of risk, to lower insurance costs that way, and any kind of payout for claims. And then we're managing the increased costs with fee increases from both landfills. Trans-Jordan will raise their rates, and that has raised their rates, and then we're anticipating they will again next July. Then Salt Lake Valley Transfer Station fee increase of $1 per ton, and that kind of gives you an estimate of the annual cost to that. And then let's see, always looking for ways to improve and increase efficiencies to reduce costs.
Just really quick, there was a change from part-time to full-time for one of the positions on the previous page. That's included in this tentative budget?
No, it is not, because we still need to evaluate that need, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
As you know, I always want to prove the case first. Right now, that position is a part-time safety coordinator, There are enough hours in there that we do need to pay benefits according to ACA, so that is part of the budget.
Okay.
We've been able to absorb that this year and next year.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for pointing that out. Okay, I'll turn it over to Paul with the financials.
Yes, this was what we presented last month. There was some changes in the preliminary budget column, but I just wanted to go through actual 2020. Those are our numbers from 2020, final numbers that were audited. The adopted budget for 2021, that's our budget for this year. And then the estimate for 2021 current year, projecting approximately a $500,000 revenue less expenses. I should say a negative $500,000 number, revenues less expenses. And then the preliminary budget for 2022. This is what we're really kind of focused on. And as far as the changes go, we've talked about them, but I'll just recap those. And this is changes from the version that we discussed in September. So the COLA increased it from 1.5% to 2%, lump sum payments of $1,500 for 13 employees, and salary market adjustments for the container specialist positions. And then also I round it to the nearest hundred. I go through and do that. I just think it makes it cleaner and it is easier to deal with. And so those were the changes. The total changes, it was approximately $58,000 in expenses increase. And that was what changed. It was in that personnel expenses line item. The other line items did not change. So any questions on this version and what changed from the previous version? Okay. And then this is our tentative cash projections. Looking at this, the light blue, we presented this last month, and then I've updated it for the changes in the previous document that we talked about. But the light blue there, final numbers for 2019 and 2020. And so at the end of 2019, we had approximately $10.5 million in cash. It's the third line from the bottom. And then 2020, we had $10.1 million in cash. This year we're projecting that will be, or estimating that will be right around $9 million as of the end of 2021 in cash. And then you can see out there just what happens. The cash, we are projecting and anticipate that the cash balance will decrease over time. Another thing I'd like to point out is the operational expenses. For the cash projections here, we use 94% of what's been budgeted, which is pretty close to what's happened historically. And so when we look at this, we can see that we anticipate cash will decrease, our cash balance over time, and that will create a need for a fee increase in the future, but not for 2022.
2022 getting down to 31% is probably as tight as you'd ever want to get, just understanding that that gives us barely 4 months worth of operating revenue. And if something significant were to happen or some issue came up, that would hopefully give us enough time to find other sources of revenue or alter our collections. But we are statutorily mandated to get the garbage and waste out of our neighborhoods. And we've typically kept, that 40 to 50% range is a lot more comfortable for just long range planning and kind of as an emergency reserve. So that's why we would be looking at likely a fee increase for 2023, so that 22% could be raised up to something that was a little more sustainable in the event of an emergency.
The next one, this is just a pie chart that shows the major expenses. Personnel, $9.7 million. That's just about 40% of our total expenses, and so that's the big one as far as what contributes to our expenses. And then disposal fees are next. To Salt Lake County, 14.65%, and maintenance is 14.07%. So this just kind of gives you a feel of what the major expenses are relative to the other expenses. And then 2022 tentative capital expenditures, 8 side load trucks, and we did order those. We talked about that in previous meetings where we got a cost benefit by getting those orders in at a certain time. We've ordered 3 light duty trucks, and then the 2 front load trucks, those have been ordered, but this is just showing them on the 2022 budget since we anticipate that we'll pay for a portion of them in 2022.
Sorry. Okay. If there's no questions, Mr. Chair, I'll get into the...
Yeah, go right ahead.
Okay. So this is my stab at trying to do some sort of an executive summary of the changes with the fees. Not saying it's perfect, but I'll do my best here to try not to confuse anybody. So we are proposing, or you gave us permission to move forward with this tentative budget to look at raising the fees that we charge for cans themselves because the purchase price for those cans has increased. So we are asking that we move that fee from $50 to $60 for new cans. And then we are asking to remove the standalone fee for delivery, and we've included it in these different scenarios of replacing cans or delivering cans, etc. So we want to increase, and I'll start with the startup fee of new homes. We want to be able to charge that $60 per can plus delivery, so it would be $130, moving from $110 previously. You can see that increase and what that equates to and why. Then we're asking to discontinue some of the cans fees related to damaged cans, etc., and just having one fee for replacement can of $70, which would include the $60 plus the $10 delivery fee. And there's different scenarios of, damaged cans. The one down here at the right, as I mentioned in the previous meeting, that's a customer-caused damaged can versus the broken can that you see in the middle, where our truck may squeeze that a little too hard, or over time that can will break. Excuse me. Then we have a refurbished can fee. What that is where the can has been brought back, say from like Horizon Heights, for example, a used can, and we get it cleaned up through our crew. And if a customer would rather have a refurbished can than a brand new can and pay that $70 fee, we have an option for them to choose that used can at a $35 fee. And then just so you know, we saved almost $71,000 this year in new can purchases by delivering refurbished cans. So it is a benefit to us as well as the residents. Then, as I mentioned previously, we want to add that new fee for roll-off containers being used for special cleanups or emergency cleanups. And that $120 fee would cover up to 2 tons of waste in those cans, and then anything above that, it would be a various fee depending on where that waste is taken to, which facility. So $27 per ton is what we pay at the Salt Lake Valley landfill, and there's a higher fee at $33, now going to be $34 a ton at the transfer station, and then Trans-Jordan we anticipate will be as high as $37 come July 1. So that's what that's all about. And then this goes through all of the fees that we charge for services, and I highlighted any changes in that document. So the tentative adoption for the tentative budget would include these, the fee schedule that is attached to the budget. And that's what we have there, Mr. Chair. If there's any questions or comments or concerns, if not, I would ask for a motion or to tentatively adopt.
Mr. Chair,
go ahead.
Mr. Chair, Brent Peel from Magna, I'll make a motion that we tentatively adopt adopt the tentative budget and fee schedule as proposed by administration.
This is Phil from White City. I'd second that.
All right, are there any other questions or comments on the tentative budget? If it's approved, it will be posted in a public location that everybody can go in and review, and then we would look at a potential adoption next month. Are there any other questions from the board? All right, then all those in favor of approving the tentative budget as presented, say aye.
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 Are there any opposed?
Yay.
All right, hearing none, then that will stand approved. Anthony will get that posted, and then we will have a final review and adoption next month. Just be aware that there is still a potential, if there's a change that needs to be made or something or a concern by the board, we can still discuss that and make that before our final adoption. Typically our budgets don't need to go through that, but that option is always out there. Okay, 3.6 is an update on the request to the county council to reorganize Woodford as a local district. We have Pam, why don't you start with that? And we have looks like Jim Bradley is here and Lisa Hartman from the county to answer questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Lisa had a meeting, so I did let her know we're starting this topic now. So I anticipate she may jump on while we're visiting about this, but we do have board member Bradley, and he and I spoke briefly on Friday about the status or updates. Let me jump to the letter that I sent out to you. This came to me late Friday, and I just want to have it available for any questions or concerns, as board member Bradley may give us an update. And then I did ask our legal counsel, Rachel Anderson, to take a look, see if there was anything that, you know, we may need to educate you as a board on or address, or there may be a response that needs to come from us of anything that we want to explain that might be part of their considerations. I don't know if that made sense, but board member Bradley, do you want to take it from here?
Yeah, Pam, there's not a lot more to say than what you've said. I know the last board meeting we had, I said that you shouldn't be too overly anxious because our budget process has begun, and that is consuming a great deal of time from the county council. But nevertheless, Lisa has conducted the meetings with all of the council members regarding the implications of you leaving the status that you're in now. And I think the issues are pretty well summed up in that letter that she sent you and which you distributed to the board members. And that is probably more than I would have ever said because it's much more thorough. So anyway, but what I'm saying is, in terms of any timeline, I would still say, given the fact that we're almost into November, we're still going to continue to deal with budgets over the next 3-4 weeks, that realistically, some action in early January probably is reasonable. Is that enough, or are there specific questions?
Councilman Bradley, I don't have specific questions for you. I think I want to direct a couple of questions to Rachel, if she's on.
Okay.
I'm here.
Rachel, when I read through this document, it sounded like an attorney wrote it. In the conclusions, do you see anything there that red flags you?
So let's look at the conclusion section. They bullet point it pretty well. They've got 3 conclusions.
3 bullets, yep.
Yeah, their first conclusion, they want to ensure that the reorganization will not jeopardize continued service to residents. in the unincorporated county. I kind of feel like that conclusion is already resolved within the body of their own memo. They pointed out a few areas which theoretically could be concerns, but then they answer those concerns and resolve them themselves. Particularly, I think that they are concerned that we would, take away services from unincorporated county.
But correct me if I'm wrong though, but our bylaws answer that directly anyway, because we can't discontinue service unless there is some reason that they are not complying with what we require for service to be provided.
Yeah, the methods for withdrawing service, which they address in the middle of their memo here, it's actually even more complicated than what they explained. There's a huge process to go through to withdraw an area from our service district. It can happen either from the request of the property owners or request from a municipality, or it may happen upon our own initiative, but there's a lengthy list of conditions that would have to apply before we'd be even allowed to do that. Number one would be that the area would have adequate service lined up. If we can't just completely cut someone off so that they have nothing, happening.
Right.
Nothing like this would ever happen without a serious amount of negotiation and desire for it to happen from both parties.
Okay, and my next point to that is that is throughout the district, regardless if it's unincorporated or not.
Yes, that applies to anyone in the district. There was
do it now.
one time where we have done a withdrawal was specifically in certain areas of Sandy, where it made more sense for them to be served by Sandy, and it was something that both sides wanted.
That's right.
And I can't imagine a scenario ever where we would just say, it doesn't really make sense for us to go to this far-flung region of the county. Let's just cut them off and sayonara. It doesn't really work that way. It would have to be, and basically the statute is set up to make sure that both sides are protected and nobody.
Exactly. Exactly. So going to my point, bullet one kind of is self-addressed, is it not?
That's my point.
Let me offer a perspective on this. I think let's not get too carried away on the bullet points. Those are reasonable concerns that we would have, saying, yeah, we want to make sure that our service area and the unincorporated area is going to remain unaffected by this. That's reasonable. We're not saying that there's all kinds of complications associated with that. We're just saying, as a body politic, that's a responsibility we have to make sure that our people continue to be served under a new regime. I think that's the long and the short of it. And I don't think there's anything wrong with stating that as one of our issues, one of our conclusions. We want to ensure service delivery for our people.
And I agree. Jim, that was not my point. Is that you guys were questioning that service? I'm just saying I think that's kind of goes across the district with it, not just an unincorporated area.
Yeah, no, so clearly, yeah.
And so that was okay.
Okay. But isn't that the case already? I mean,
yes.
This doesn't change at all, whether we stay the same or whether we change. It's the same. We could abandon the district either way, correct? So this is
exactly
a new point at some point.
Yes, my point. Exactly.
Yeah, and I guess my only point was that I'm not sure if there's further action that needs to be done to ensure that continued service will be had, other than just understanding how the statute works and recognizing that can't happen easily or against anyone's wishes, really. But moving on, the next bullet point, and this is specifically
Rachel?
because, yeah.
Rachel, Pam here. So I just want to make sure, I think where this came about as a possible concern is dealing with private roads, if I may. And I don't want to get into too far in the weeds and have that be the topic of discussion, but I think that it's important to explain the fact that there's a huge difference between our statutory obligation to service homes that are on public roads versus homes that are outside of our jurisdiction, and really outside of our authority or obligation, and that would be private roads. And that is in the unincorporated area, and it's also in any municipality within the district.
But as you well know, that's an issue now under this organization, and probably would exist under the new one. So
absolutely,
that's not going
Yeah, I
away.
want to see that
Absolutely.
that one is changing. The one that, and I guess I had kind of read it the other way, as far as actually changing the boundaries of the district or where we are servicing. The biggest change there was, rather than going to a vote to the county council, that would be handled from the board. That was one of those
Right.
things that was not allowed under the special service district organization that we've been on. But and the last time we did that was when, again, what Rachel said was with Sandy, where we had a mutual agreement that it just made more sense that homes that had been incorporated into Sandy have their service changed to Sandy as well.
Yeah, and it worked fine. Yeah.
The next bullet was to direct departments to review existing contracts with the district and to negotiate new terms if appropriate. I don't, see a problem with that. That's not a red flag, which is what you'd asked. And then the last one was negotiate terms for the leasing of the Public Works Administrative Building.
I guess my question there, Rachel, is what with our reorganization, what changes that lease that we have?
Nothing.
Well, it expires, I believe, in 2028 when the bonds are paid off. We'd have to renegotiate the lease. And we wanted, I presume, wanted to make it clear that, at some point, the renegotiation of the use of the county property would be necessary.
But that has to, doesn't that have to be done either way, Jim?
Yeah.
Yes.
Right. So the reorganization doesn't affect that, does it?
No.
No, but I think the reorganization, I think there had been talk, nothing specific, but had been talk about the district's potential ownership of any of that building. And I think this just kind of clarifies that.
I see.
Rachel, am I correct on that, do you think? I mean,
So yes, when
Lisa's not on, I don't think yet. So
okay, so when we were renegotiating that lease just recently, that was something that we actually wanted to have cleared up at that time, and we were told that that was not possible from the county's end because they were not in a position where they could bind the future council to any decisions, and that was a question better addressed after or closer to the time when the agreement was to expire. But now we're hearing that it's something that you all at the county want to have addressed before this transition is to occur potentially.
well, yeah, but you can
are-
understand that. You can understand that too, that we don't want to say, oh yeah, let's go ahead and have all these issues rise up after that, and having the county at a disadvantage in terms of any standing on how to deal with it. So why wouldn't we want to deal with these types of issues up front so everybody understands going in what we're talking about?
Well, so we take no building depreciation. We have no ownership of the building. We're leasing it now, correct?
Yeah.
Yes.
And you're paying a lease that is the amount that is required to pay the bond. But that was just, I think, a lease agreement of convenience as much as anything else. So when that bond is paid off and the attachment, that's for another day. But all we're saying is, we're going to deal with a new lease come prior to 2028.
So I guess my question is how does that negotiating of the lease affect or have any bearing on the reorganization of the district? The lease is going to take place either way.
No, that it doesn't get in the way. Like I said, I didn't see any red flag in terms of any of the conclusions. But I'm speaking without having talked to the council either yet.
I understand.
Yeah, okay.
So is Councilman Bradley, from your perspective, is it then what you feel that they're looking at is some sort of a confirmation or a direction that when as I understand it now, the negotiations for the lease renewal would be occurring about a year before the lease expires.
Right.
Honestly, it may take a little bit longer than that because it'll be a little more complex. But to have those negotiations either, I don't know if promised isn't quite the right word from this board, but yes, that is our intent. I think the intent is to stay there as long as we possibly
yeah,
can.
of
It works
course.
out for both. It works out for both entities tremendously. I think just the location and the the savings on that. So.
Yeah, I think we got to be careful not to make too much out of this. I mean, clearly there were some concerns about this initiative. A lot of them raised by me. I think it's a bad idea, and I've said that frankly a number of times. Or maybe not a bad idea, but a move that doesn't seem to be necessary. And I keep saying, show me why it's necessary. But anyway, those are the old arguments. So, given where we are now, we did some due diligence, that here are the concerns that may or may not rise. We need to brief the council on this and let them know where it is, because it will be the council who makes the final decision. Given that, here are some of the things that we've come through. And this letter gives you a flavor of the concerns that we've shared. Not we, I haven't, but that Lisa and others have shared with the council members when they're giving this briefing on what the reorganization means to the county. And so whether they want to move forward and say, yeah, it's a done deal, I don't know at this point. I presume so, quite frankly, but I don't know that.
So let me back up just a second. When Council Member Peel asked me to speak about this, he just asked if I had any concerns or red flags with the conclusions that were given. Mm-hmm. And my answer is no. Let me make it a little bit more clear. No. So I don't want this to be more contentious than I meant to.
No, I don't either. Yeah.
My only comment was that, in fact, I feel that they are so much not red flags that I feel like at least point number 1 and number 2 are not even continuing action items as they are listed as being. It says, these are the following measures that need to be taken. To me, it sounds like point 1 and point 2 were actually already answered in the memo itself. So
that should bring some comfort to you.
I'm not sure those are even continuing action items. That was all I was getting at there.
Yeah.
And with the last one, obviously, what my point there was that, yes, we completely agree. We would love to have those terms figured out. And in fact, we wanted to have them figured out previously when we were negotiating the lease and told that we couldn't. My only concern there is just whether that would continue to delay this process.
Oh, I can't see that happening. The lease doesn't expire for another 4 or 5 years, so I don't know why it would. But let me just say this too, just as an overall last statement, that under any circumstances, Salt Lake County wants Woodford to succeed. You provide a quality service, you do a great job. There's no administrative issues with it. There's no service issues related to it that we would be concerned about. But it is a technical process that I think it deserves to be aired, as I've said all along. So we want you to, if the council agrees to have you reorganized, we're cheerleaders. We want you to do the best job you can, and we'll be there to help any way we can. And that's the long and the short of it. So.
All right. I don't see that Lisa has been able to join. Is that?
No, but I think the letter probably sums up what her concerns were. I don't know that either, but I'm guessing it.
Well, Jim, maybe as a favor, ask her if there's anything that her understanding of this is a little bit different. I guess we could have her back in November.
Oh, sure.
If she feels that that's necessary, or if there's one of the some of the board that would like to ask her questions specifically. But I appreciate the clarifications. I would hope if that's the understanding on both sides, I think then we're probably fine to move forward.
Yeah, no, and I think that's a fair assumption. And if anybody on the board has any questions, feel free to direct them to me, and I'll specifically get Lisa to respond to them. And I'm, without question, she would be more than willing to show up and answer any questions you have. Today, it's been a confusing couple of weeks, but and she's been working hard. So forgive her for not being in attendance today. But I think, as I said, the letter says most of what she would have said.
And Mr. Chair, my final comment, and Rachel, thanks for kind of clarifying that, because that's really where I was getting to. I just didn't want any of these points slowing the process down.
Yeah.
And it sounds to me like it's not going to. If Mr. Bradley is correct in their timing, I don't know, how, if that's accurate, or if we can get a little bit better answer on maybe what their timing to a decision would be. But I think that's what my biggest question is that something that we need to realistically look at, and I don't know who can answer that and who we have to go to get that answer. I mean, are we looking at January for a decision, or is there a decision coming possibly sooner?
Well, does it matter? Let me ask that.
I don't know that it does for our budgeting for next year, right? Can I ask anybody?
No, I don't. I think that the only times that it would matter would be if one of those specific issues came up, whether there was annexation or de-annexation. Fee increases would be another one where there's some slight differences, and those aren't on our horizon, at least in the near future. So I'll just hope that Jim doesn't take a grievance to his grave about me, because the last time I was the chair of the Administrative Control Board was when we went to the 2013 reorganization, where most of the administrative responsibilities were landed on my successor. So maybe it's not Jim, maybe it's Sherry that will be upset with me, but
Board Chair, I do have, the only comment I would have on that would be that typically what we do as a board is if we have everything resolved on our budget, we approve our budgets typically in November, and then we usually don't have a meeting in December. And so that would be the only impact I would see, is if we need to meet back again in December, if the county council comes back with something that needs addressed by this board, then we would just need to kind of have a heads up if we needed to have a meeting in December to address it. That would be the only thing that I would.
Well, the only thing I can't imagine that there'd be anything that comes up that you couldn't work out. Like bullet number 2, we were asked the departments to go through and review the contracts they have with Woodford, and to see, what would a reorganization do, or when do those contracts expire, et cetera, et cetera. But that's what any business would do if they're looking at finding a new vendor or changing an organizational structure.
I agree.
Agree with you,
I don't
Jim.
disagree with that at all.
Yeah, the only thing I was trying to point out earlier is just right above that conclusion section under the heading contracts. It looks to me like they already did review the contracts, and it specifically concludes reorganization into a local district would not impact these agreements.
Yeah, and that's what
we're in the same place. That's why I was just saying I'm not sure that's even an action item still. It looked like the conclusions aren't necessarily action items. I think. Okay, well, it said that it was, but okay, thank you.
Okay, well, maybe they are. I didn't write the letter.
Yeah.
That's all I know, folks.
I have just a handful of other comments to clarify in the letter, if you want me to do that now, or if you just want me to do that directly back.
It's your choice,
Lisa.
Yeah, I mean, if we can do it in 2 or 3 minutes, that would be great.
Yeah, it's very quick. And maybe it's just for the benefit of everyone, so that we're all on the same page. There's just a few points that I think need clarification. On the first page, under considerations, it says reorganization as a local district would allow the district to become a political subdivision of the state. We already are a political subdivision of the state. I just wanted that to be clear. That's under 7D/1/103. Special service districts are political subdivisions of the state. Very minor point. Just wanted to make sure.
Okay. No, good point.
But you are a lawyer, so we understand.
I know. I got to be clear here. Oh, sorry. My watch decided to start talking. Let me see. The other one was under taxes and fees on the next page. It says, as a local district, the district would be vested with the right, and it lists a whole bunch of things, including imposing fees and other charges for services and owning and leasing property. Just wanted it to be clear that we already have those rights. That's not going to be anything new. I think that was clear, but just wanted to make sure.
Well,
Rachel?
what would be new is your ability to do property tax, obviously.
Well, yeah, I didn't, include that one. And then the last clarification on the bottom of the page, ownership of property, it says if reorganized, any property acquired by the district as a special service district would also become property owned by the local district. I would argue that just anything we own continues to be owned by us. There's not a change there.
Yeah.
So just from a legal standpoint, that's not a change. We own what we own, and that doesn't change because of the organizational type change. But those were my technical comments.
Rachel, Pam here. Could you jump back to the improvement district and that thought that we could expand services as an improvement district? I know that that was one of those items that the mayor's office was concerned about, and I just wondered if you could speak to that, of expanding services where it says commercial waste or sewage.
Right. So I think the concern here is that in the statute, they list the types of services that can be provided by different types of districts. And an improvement district is the type of district that can do sewer and water. But if we are not created to do that, I believe, and I would have to go back and remind myself on how this process works, but in order to add additional services, that would be quite a process to change our initial charter, just because it's within the basket of types of services that this type of district can provide doesn't mean that we are created with the ability to improve those. It's like you pick out of that basket which types we're going to do, and we haven't included water or sewer ever. That's not within any of our bylaws or any of our charters, and the intention would not be to take over. We couldn't just start doing those. We'd have to
Rachel, just for clarification, we went to the improvement district because of the board makeup in an improvement district.
Pretty much the only reason, yeah.
Right? I mean, that's okay.
And then they also noted the point about how one political subdivision cannot just start providing a service that's already be provided by someone else.
Yeah.
You know, pretty much the entire valley or county is already, has water and sewer service by other entities. They're already within other entities' jurisdictions. So we couldn't just come in and start, competing for that. That's not allowed. So there's really no way that we would start dipping our toes into other types of services, even though statutorily the type of district has other, authorized types to choose from. We haven't chosen those. We're only choosing what we're doing now.
Right. And what, I think probably the sole purpose of that paragraph, without consulting with the author, is simply that we don't want to be put in a position where we are creating an entity that's going to compete with our services.
Yeah.
And so you would have the legal right to do that in some cases, given the change. But we want to say, hey, this is one issue that may come up. And if you allow the reorganization without any specific examples, there's a possibility. That's part of the due diligence, saying, okay, here's what you're getting into, council. Just so you're fully aware of it. Not that this is necessarily anything we're terribly concerned about, but it is a possibility.
No, I think those questions are fair and legitimately should be asked. The place where I would see that it could potentially be a long-term item were, for example, if the county decided to divest themselves of landfill services.
Yeah.
That would be something that I think would probably be within the legal right for WFWRD to take over, but we wouldn't likely go start our own landfill, certainly with the agreements that we already have in place. But longer term down the road, if for whatever reason that came up, that would be something.
No, and Scott, that's very fair. And I guess, now that you mention it, probably is our major concern is protecting the financial integrity of the landfill. We don't want other landfills to creep up and start taking our revenue stream, so we can continue to maintain that landfill. I think that's certainly something that we'd be probably maybe the only concern we'd have. And I don't, and I think you folks understand that too. The board does. You folks, me too. I mean, but you know, nobody wants to see any of our public assets that are necessary in any type of jeopardy. So I'm just raising the issues, like you said.
Yeah, no, and I think that's legitimate. But again, I think it would be something that would be mutually agreed to.
Yeah.
If and when it ever actually occurs, probably way after we are all gone, because I don't see that happening.
Yeah, I don't object to anything that
Harris?
was raised in this memo as legitimate questions that the council would certainly
Yeah.
have. I think that it does a fine job of explaining each of those points and doing what I've just said myself of why these are actually not issues that we majorly see as being issues. But I totally recognize why you would include them in the memo and that they're valid questions that your council and that we've honestly had as well. And so I don't take any objection to them being in this memo or being explained.
Good.
I think it's perfect. These are the questions that everyone has and they need to be answered. I completely agree.
Okay.
Catherine Harris, Emigration Township.
Go ahead.
If a very brief comment, and I'm well aware that we are over our time, and so this probably isn't something that we need to keep discussing right now, but I followed this with interest and followed it closely. And I was somewhat surprised to hear you say, Jim, that you are opposed to it, because as far as I know, you haven't said that explicitly before. So I'm a little surprised. And at some point, I'd love to hear you outline the reasons. You may have touched on the primary reason just a few minutes ago with regard to the landfill, but I was surprised to say that you are clearly opposed to it. And particularly in light of the fact that I think all of the other entities represented on, the Wasatch Waste and Recycling Board have.
Well, that's probably a conversation for another time. And it's just certainly my opinion. And when I say I'm opposed to it, I find it more unnecessary than anything else. And I'd like to have the county, maybe because I'm an old county guy, but I think it provides a nice governor on anything that takes place. And it certainly hasn't gotten in the way of historically, of any of the actions of Wooford. Simply that. And like I said, and I will be a champion as well, that if it does go through, which I presume it will, I'll be, I'll be happy for everybody and we'll make it work. I don't know what else to say. But I do have reservations, just because I'm a policy wonk, I guess. I don't know.
All right. Well,
thanks. Yeah, I'm not going to drag the meeting out.
Yeah. All right. Let's move on to Pam's report, recruitment, hiring, and anything related to COVID.
Okay, you ready?
Yeah.
Just to reiterate that we did have Andrea Murdoch, our wonderful HR manager, has a great career opportunity. Andrea came to us and really expanded her knowledge and skill with compensation, benefits. These are areas that she really didn't have a lot of experience in previously, and gained that experience and is moving on to the HR director for the Westminster College, and wish her the very best. She will be missed. But that position, as well as the sustainability coordinator position, have kind of risen to that these may be positions that could be stepping stones for people to come and learn and grow, and then they may have other career advancement opportunities somewhere else, because we're just not that big of an organization, which I'm fine with. It's just, as you know, when we have to recruit other people, there is training processes that go through, which is fine. But I did want to point that out. And then Ethan Morris is moving on to work for a nonprofit dealing with air pollution and trying to reduce that, and I'm so thankful. I told him, please reduce the air pollution that we're experiencing every year. We have other situations like with our district controller and treasurer, and you have maybe seen these announcements pop up, and we had 3 of them come up. We wanted to start the recruitment process early for the controller and treasurer, Craig Adams has let Paul and I know that he wishes to retire. Craig joined us back in 2012 when we needed to hire an accountant and an HR manager. And at the time, Craig was really overqualified to be an accountant, but he was wanting somewhere to come and maybe not have as much responsibilities as he had in the past with Pacific Corp as a CFO and et cetera. But we were very thankful that he did come to us because we were given that administrative function, which was huge, of having to bill residents rather than have the fee on the property tax. And he was instrumental in helping us develop our customer database as well as our billing and receiving systems, and so thankful he did come to us. But at any rate, we started that recruitment process for all 3 of those positions. To jump back to Andrea's, there was a pool of about 18 applicants, and narrowed it down to 5 to 7 qualified candidates to interview. Thankful for that. Currently in the process of recruiting for Ethan's spot, and then also for Craig's, hoping for some nice pool of qualified candidates for each of those. And then just a brief update on equipment operators. We currently have 4 vacancies, which we're considering quite low, and thankful for that compared to what we've had in the past with up to 10 or 12. And I think that honestly those salary increases have helped with that. And then the 1 vacancy for container specialists. COVID updates, we were hit just like what was happening within the state, within the nation. We had a spike of situations where employees needed time off, either due to illness or needing to take care of family. So 15 employees within 3 weeks who needed time off, some of which were office employees. So we've been navigating that, and we're thankful that the majority of them have come back and they're doing well. And then something to consider that I added to this report is there are some agencies, including Salt Lake County, that have put forth an incentive for employees to be vaccinated. We've mentioned this in the past, and it was something that the board wanted to consider at the time, but maybe now with other agencies and organizations having this, I was wondering if you would want to give us the direction to explore that possibility and then just come back with a recommendation in November if you so see fit.
I would be interested to hear what board members have to say, whether they'd be interested in exploring that. I know that there are feelings on both sides of it. I personally don't have a significant issue with some sort of an incentive, but I know that others do. So I'd be curious just to hear what other board members have to say.
Mr. Chair, this is Dan Gibbons from Holiday. I think what Pam is suggesting is simply an exploratory look at the issue, not that we would be voting yes or no. And I think that makes total sense, regardless of how people may feel about it now, especially given the number of staff that have been affected, as reported just by Pam a few minutes ago. I think we'd be remiss not to at least look into it, and then we can revisit this in November. But that's my feeling.
Okay. Anyone else?
Chairman Bracken, this is Anna from Taylorsville. I agree. I don't ever want anything as a penalty, but perhaps looking at possible incentives, that might be something that I could jump on board with. And just not to beat a dead horse, but we get to issues like this on the board that we really need to put some time and effort into. And we spend so much of our board meetings talking about removing ourselves from Salt Lake County. So I think we need to make a decision on having our own entity and moving away from Salt Lake County. If we don't, we do, and let's spend some more time with some of these issues that Pam has come up against.
Okay.
No, I'm supportive of looking into it. I think I pushed back on doing any kind of penalty type of things. I think I've probably been a loud on that, and I still maintain that, but I never am opposed to looking into certain things and exploring.
All right, is there anyone that would be opposed to having Pam and the staff look at it and possibly bringing back a recommendation in November? All right, and then hearing none, then why don't you go ahead and take that direction, Pam, and we will, our November meeting, as a reminder, is going to be in the evening. It will not be in the daytime, so let me get back to the, if you could take that direction, we'll put that on the agenda for the meeting after the public hearing.
Yes, thank you. I will bring something back.
Okay, there are other items on for our next meeting. But our next meeting is set for November 15th at 6 p.m. I will probably attend in person, at least in the anchor position, with it being a public hearing. If someone shows up to comment, I think that they would like that. Are the feelings of the board, we would still like to do the WebEx? Is that what the majority feel, or would you rather just have it all in person?
Mr. Chair, I'll jump in here. I think that's up to staff. I think the reason we're doing this is mostly for their comfort and protection. If they're comfortable and people are comfortable, I wouldn't mind meeting in person. My opinion.
I agree.
All right. Well, we'll keep it as is. That both options will be available. I was just letting them know that for in my sake, I will probably be there simply as it is the public hearing on the budget. Others of the board may choose, and obviously can let Anthony and Pam know ahead of time so we can make appropriate arrangements. I am not aware of any closed sessions that are required. Is that correct, Pam and Rachel?
No, we do have one to discuss the pending litigation.
That's right. Okay, then what I would do then is let's close off the public session, and then I would entertain a motion to close the open session and open a closed session. This is litigation, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I move that we close the public meeting and move into closed session.
Second.
Okay, we have a second. Okay, all those in favor say aye.
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 Are there any opposed? I hear none, and we need a 3/4, so 100% should do that. I would entertain a motion to close the closed session, open the open session, and adjourn it.
So moved.
Closed session.
Okay, I heard, I believe Brent and Sherry on that.
No, it was Anna. I think it was Anna.
Anna, okay. All right, all those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed?
Board Chair Brackett, I
Yes.
did not get a, I did not hear who was the second.
We have Anna and Brent.
I
Brent,
didn't.
thank you.
I'll take credit for the second, but I didn't do it.
Well, there was a lot coming in, so if Brent's willing to take the hit,
I'll take it.
We'll let him. All right, did I ask for the vote? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, this meeting stands adjourned. We will see you next month at 6 p.m. on the 15th.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Chair.
Thank you.
You.